Hi, welcome to another episode of The Influential Nonprofit. I'm here with my new best friend, Cindy Wagman. I was just on your podcast and now you're on mine.
I
So
know.
amazing podcast swap.
Yes. And like that wasn't even planned, but I just loved our conversation. And I was like, oh my goodness, we are new best friends. I'm so excited.
Yes. Hold on one second. All right. Today we're going to talk about something I've never talked about before, which is fractional fundraising. And I'm not even sure I know what it is because fractional is a big word, you know? So before we get into that, though, I always start with the same question, and then we're going to meet Cindy and we're going to talk all about it. So Cindy, you're going to introduce yourself by way of answering this question. Tell me something you're really proud of that you don't get to brag about a lot.
Okay. So, hey, I'm Cindy Wagman, and I'm really proud. Oh, there's a lot of things. I'm very proud of the network I've built of Fractional Fundraisers. We have over 40 people in the network. But the funny thing is, I don't want to say like I brag a lot about it, but I do share. I'm very open. And so I talk about all the things good and bad. So maybe people have heard me brag about that one before. And another thing is my 12-year-old son just hosted a fundraiser and raised over $2,000, which is great. And I'm as a fundraiser myself of over 20 years, I'm super proud. And I am just like delighted in his embracing of that.
Right?
Yeah.
That warms the heart. Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Oh, okay. So now for 15 years, you were an in-house fundraiser and you started your own fractional fundraising business. And now what you do is you really teach other fundraisers how to be their own boss and start their own fractional fundraising business. And also to help us consultants, stop, would you say, shake off the shoulds, drop the scarcity hangover from the nonprofit sector and find abundance in entrepreneurship, which is absolutely true that you can do. As we talked about this when I was on your podcast, my job that I had for 16 years, I worked with a company called 501 Creative, and Karen Handelman is the president, and she started the business in 1995. And every single person in her life told her, this is a stupid idea. Nonprofits don't have any money. You're never going to make a business off this. And she did. And it was like, and it's still wonderful, so it's this idea of really shifting our mindset, and finding, the abundance, which the whole sector is really welcome to do that at any time.
Yes. Let's all get on board with that. That's the first step. Yeah.
I think, I think and I lost an earring, so I'm going to take this other one off so I don't look weird. It's in the house somewhere. I don't go anywhere. It's a really very limited span of places it could be.
I'm like in my home office or with the kids at the soccer field, and that's my life right now. So
I just, literally came upstairs, so it's here somewhere. All right. So, so that's the first thing, is shifting our mindset. And that's something that I talk a lot about, that I feel like we were taught, oh, there's only so much money in philanthropy, so you better get and I probably even said that to people, I because we believed it,
Yeah. No, it's this sector is going through an interesting time right now, because I think we're having these conversations more and more about what does abundance look like? What does, how do we talk about the overhead myth? Like all of those are part of the same conversation. And I think part of that conversation is also around like our human resources, right? So how we treat our staff, how we look at what hours people work and the flexibility they have. And a lot of what I'm seeing as alternate staffing models. And I think all of this is part of this slow, I don't think it's fast, but very slow shift towards, okay, just because we felt like we have everything is limited and we have to extract as much value as possible from every single resource we have, that I think is starting to shift in the sector. And part of that is fractional executives or fractional fundraisers is just one type of that, but looking at, okay, how do we think differently about doing things in a way that allows our organizations to grow and flourish and achieve our missions without that scarcity or feeling like we have to self-sacrifice.
Right. That was it for me is, oh, I have to sacrifice myself so you can feel better, right? If I'm going to do good in the world, I must suffer. And actually, with the way we do the most good in the world, there's the Rumi quote that I quote all the time, which is, you give from the overflow, not the depths of the well. And so it's okay to, and even like, it's okay to be easy. And that's what I talked with you about on your podcast. And people were like, I don't believe this. When do you get your work done? Like, no, work can be easy. There can be flow and grace and ease. We were taught that for things to be meaningful, they have to be hard. And that's really, and you and I know in our work that what comes easiest to us, that's what you build your business on. You know, that, you know, and even in fundraising, and I talk about fundraising, like, if it doesn't feel good, people aren't going to do it. If it doesn't feel easy, joyful, fun, you'll do it for a while and you could maybe push yourself through it, but you're certainly not going to be as successful as if you connect with the great, you know, how can I connect with the grace and ease? And so that's, you know, and but the whole philosophy is I have to sacrifice myself, right? If our offices are too nice, or if we're like, oh, you know, it's just, and it is shifting, it's changing.
It's changing. And one of the things, so I'll tell you a little bit about fractional executives. I think it's really important to that piece, which is, you know, oftentimes I do understand, I'm not saying organizations have like infinite budgets, but the way we look at problem solving with the budgets that we have, we've always done it as like, okay, I'm going to get the best bang for my buck, which is like the person with the least amount of experience. And those are the people who have the hardest time doing the work, right? And so when we surround ourselves with inexperienced people, because that's all, quote unquote, all we can afford, the work is hard. And fractional executives allow organizations to say, okay, we do have a limited budget, but instead of hiring someone full-time in-house who has a hard time with the work, who's not experienced, let's go out and find someone with like 10 plus years experience. And we're going to hire them for a fraction of their time. It becomes available to us as an organization. And guess what? It's a fraction of what they would typically charge. And so it all of a sudden fits in our budget. And that's fundamentally what fractional executives are. It's someone with a lot of experience, strategy, oversight, but they're coming in and they're doing the day-to-day work. And so those are the people who have the easiest time, the most fun doing the work, because they've done it and they can come into your small organization and it becomes easy.
Because they're doing it because they love it, right?
They love it.
They love it.
Yeah. And also, like a lot of fundraisers mid to late career, their earning potential is best met traditionally in bigger organizations, right? So the organizations that are going to pay them, you know, a 6-figure salary and all that kind of stuff. Well, guess what? I had one of those jobs. I was the director of development at a business school, and it was boring. Like, it's not where I want to work. I want to work with the small organizations. I want to help them be successful. I want to be aligned with my social justice values. That's where I get joy and where I feel like I'm contributing. And when I started fractional fundraising, that's exactly what it allowed me to do. I got to work with documentary film festivals and arts organizations and really cool organizations that would never be able to afford my work otherwise. So
okay, there's a lot to unpack here. All right. And so in my book, I talk about how nonprofits value money and not time, right? Like, right. And so we don't value time because, oh, we're going to try to do that in-house and blah, blah, blah. And I say, well, do you want to be a Canva expert or a relationship expert, right? Like, you get to decide how you spend your time. But they like, so we've got, and so you're working and working and working, spending all this time. But then you know what I'm saying? And that creates this imbalance. But in your model, this is just so beautiful because so we think in polarity. I either have to pick money or time, right? So I either sacrifice one, or I either spend more and save time, or spend less and spend time.
Yeah.
Right. But actually, and this is what I call the influential third. Hold on with me. It's like,
I call it your secret option C. So we have A, B, and it's your secret. So I love it.
What I call beyond the polarity. Let's look beyond the polarity, because we often think in polarities, which is fine. That's how we're taught. It's either this or this, right?
Yeah.
And you say, no, but look beyond the polarity. What is this, like what I call the influential third is, okay, well, you can have, what would it look like for everyone to get their needs met? Right? What does that look like? And then this model is like, this is how everyone gets their needs met, right?
Yeah.
Organizations get the expertise they need. They don't have to spend the money. The person gets to grow in their skill set and be aligned to their values. That's just a win.
Exactly. I love it. So yeah, I talk about like option A, option B,
and
these
secret option C.
And then your secret option C is that third option that you mentioned. But yeah, like, and I get it. Like, I want to say, I've always worked in the nonprofit sector. I've always been a fundraiser. I knew I wanted to be a fundraiser even before like I graduated university. And so my experience with consultants until the last few years had always been like someone who's going to come in and share some advice, and sometimes good advice, sometimes advice that I've been saying in-house for a few years, but for some reason we listen better to consultants. Yes. But it was never like, I never considered that consultants would come in and actually get some of the work done and actually do some of the day-to-day implementation. That was not on my radar until I started figuring out, and again, saying, okay, in-house is option A, option B is that traditional consulting model. What would it look like if we combine that? Because in my experience, small organizations, they need hands. They need people who are going to do the work. And so, yeah, that's how I started doing this model. I did not come up with fractional executives as a term or as necessarily, but we had started very organically, where I was really trying to balance the wins of what do I need, what do my clients need, and it really became clear that day-to-day support with the high-level strategy didn't exist in traditional consulting models or staffing models. And so we pulled all that together.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, like, I don't do day-to-day stuff, right? I'm a coach. I'm a coach and a trainer. I'll teach you how to do it. I'll do it with you, but I'm not going to do it for you. That's a different skill set. And I understand, people need stuff done. You know, they just need to get those tasks done.
Yeah. And there's lots of needs. Obviously, like what you provide organizations is critical. And so it's figuring out and helping organizations really assess, is there someone who can be coached, who can, be supported? And sometimes they're just not. And how do we help those organizations?
And I get that. Like, and I'm just saying that because there's lots of model, because like, so for instance, there is, you're the fractional model. I'm sort of a coaching model where people buy into programs that I have. Okay. Yeah. I don't do proposals. I don't, that like, and I think that's really fading as well. Maybe, I don't know. I don't Hopefully. Do it. I know, please. And I can do a whole podcast about why you don't want to find your partners that way. Maybe I will.
You should.
Why proposals are not the way to go. And also other people do work that way, where you say, hey, we want some help with this, A, B, C. And you're like, okay, here's my solutions. Here's how much it'll cost, and then you provide the solution. And, so just keeping in mind when you're looking for resources, that there are different models out there and where different people are offering things, and just being very clear about what outcome you want, and is that partner or that resource provider aligned with really what the outcome that you want. What I found is, I'm not a magic wand. I wish I could be. And what I found is that people will, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'll say, oh, I'm paying this person, a nice contract to handle our fundraising. Therefore, I can forget about fundraising, right? And so it's just being very cautious of putting somebody like, oh, here's my hero. Because the second you don't deliver, if you understand the drama triangle, the second you don't deliver, you become the villain.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't have a wand. I don't like people say, can you come talk to my board for an hour? I'm like, what's that going to do?
An hour is,
I'm not a magician. If an hour could fix them, they wouldn't be broken. Not that anybody's broken, but you know what I mean? Oh, this is a chronic problem. This is going on for 5. You think I'm going to fix that and then fire them up? So I can definitely help, but it's going to take a little bit more,
Yeah.
And so just being very conscious of that, no one's a magic wand, right? And no one can come in and just you can just abdicate the things that you don't want to have to deal with. You can actually put strategic partners in, but when it works best when everyone's committed to the outcome, right? We're all committed to the outcome, but you're fractional people like, hey, I'm the one that can help you get there. I have this strategy, but also the day-to-day, right? Hands-on experience to actually do the work.
Yeah. What I would say, so yeah, I love that magic wand because like I want one so badly. But yes, we are not magic. Now, the way I train fractional fundraisers and the way I talk to organizations about considering fractional executive support is that it's not a short-term solution. So I train people to work on minimum 12-month contracts because we actually need time to get results in fundraising. It does not happen overnight.
It takes a year minimum
to start to see a return. And so I talk about that. I train people on that because that is really important. Expectation management is so critical to not becoming the villain, as you talk about. So that's one thing. And that it takes time and it takes patience and consistency. So anything less than that, and I've seen this with organizations, they'll hire someone in-house, 6 months later, they'll be like, where's the money? And it's just not been enough time. And then they'll let that person go, or the person will leave, and they're no further along than when they started. So to me, that's really critical. Fractional executives are a longer term solution compared to most consulting. Although really like coaching a lot of consultants you should be working with over the long term because that's where you're going to get the best benefit and the most transformation. Yeah. Now so having seen a lot of executive directors where traditionally, if they're hiring someone without a lot of experience in-house, they are like, we always think, okay, just hire more staff and life gets easier, but it actually can get harder. With fundraising, if you hire someone who isn't experienced and they are being managed by an executive director and board who are not experienced fundraisers, it actually becomes more work for the ED. They have to coach this person and they don't know how to manage or coach them. And so the fundraiser will spend a lot of time doing things that are not effective, that are, barking up the wrong tree, so to speak. Like they just spend a lot of time wasted on things because they're not managed well. And then of course that leads to the executive director being more stressed out and being like, well, where's our money coming from? And then they start panicking.
Or you wouldn't believe how many people that I do, the strategy session, intake calls with, who are put into a position where they have no experience, little to no experience, and the ED doesn't have a lot of experience either. And I'm like, so who's
running the ship?
Who's going to lead this? Because no one is going to be more excited. I truly believe the development director, or whoever is the lead of the fundraising, whatever you call that person, even if it's the executive director, you set the temperature. No one's going to be more excited, more committed, more, you know what I mean, more intentional, purposeful than that person. And so what I hear is like there's hesitation and like they're not sure, and it's really interesting to me. And a lot of these folks they're really good at relationship building. That's,
Mhm.
so they've got intuitively, they got some skills, they just don't
Yeah.
know how to apply them in this arena. There's
Yeah.
really nobody around them that can help them do that. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, this is an interesting way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not, it's like, I want to be clear here, like everyone's doing the best they can with what they have.
For sure.
And it's just going to be a long learning curve,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then what that happens is they get event heavy because they don't know how to ask for money, but they can
Mm.
organize. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah. And one of the like I've seen that this sort of like misdirection, which again just leads to more stress and more reliance on like funding sources that are really hard to repeat year over year. And so a lot of people, when they talk about consultants, they talk about, we're teaching them to fish, right?
Mhm.
And which is great, and organizations need to know how to fish. But the unique thing about fractional executives is we're also kind of doing the fishing for them in
Yeah.
the short to midterm, because sometimes that is like, while the organization is literally starving, it takes time to learn how to fish. And so I always think about fractional executives as this interim option to bridge the gap between starving and being a great fisher person,
Yeah.
right? Like being someone who can, get the resources they need. And typically with fundraising, that looks like eventually I want them to hire in-house. I want them to have a senior fundraiser on the team day in, day out, who's growing the organization and then building a team of their own in fundraising. But to take the leap from like not having someone in-house or having someone really junior or inexperienced to getting that really experienced person, that's where fractional fundraisers or fractional executives are really uniquely positioned to help organizations.
Right.
So it's a very much, and I mention this because I hear that a lot in our sector where we talk about, teach them to fish versus give them the fish or what have you. And I 100%, like, I would even go as far as to say fractional executives are kind of like a Band-Aid solution to a much bigger problem, which is organizational capacity. But it's an important Band-Aid. Like, we still need that while we work on those other things.
Yeah. Okay. How fractional is fractional?
So the
Like,
way
I
I
mean, is this like 10, 20 hours a week? What are we talking here?
So I usually talk about it in terms of like what percentage of a time someone might get, or the way I train fractional fundraisers, and this could be different for other fractional executives, but the way that we've tested this out over almost 9 years is it's about a third of each client is about a third of someone's time.
Okay.
Now, some fractional fundraisers take on 4 clients, some want to work less, so they'll take on fewer clients. But typically that's what we've stress tested. So we don't guarantee hours or track hours or anything like that. We work to deliverables and
Yes.
getting the work done,
Outcomes,
because
not hours. That's my big
exactly,
thing. Mhm.
exactly. And you know what? We take holidays like everyone else and time off. And so at the end of the day, the work is getting done, and most fractional fundraisers are, I would say, comfortably working a full-time-ish schedule with about 3 clients. Now, year end is going to be busy, summer is going to be less busy, and it evens out.
Yeah. Yeah. It evens out. And I love that because, this could be another podcast, Cindy. We've got a list now.
I know.
Like the hours tracking and all of that. There's so much to unpack there, around trust, about, deliverables, about,
Yeah.
like that, again, valuing time and, instead of the outcome, or, what people deliver, and
Yeah.
wanting to sort of manage,
Yeah.
people's time. And I mean,
Well,
we, in my old job, we have billable hours, right? So we track our time because
yeah.
we have billable hours. And there are even like design companies and stuff are even moving away from that
Yeah.
model.
Yeah. Well, and the way I like to think about it is, and how I started to think about this was, I actually I used to run a small agency, and I would one of my staff members was sick and I had to write a grant that she was working on. And it probably took me an hour, and it probably took her almost a week, not a week full time, but like many hours, let's say 10 times as much time as it would take
Yeah.
me. And mine was probably better because that's what experience gets us.
Yes.
And so why would someone why would I charge for my hours? I'm charging for what I deliver, which is a better product in the end. And it happened to take less time. Well, that's good for me, right? So we shouldn't penalize people for being good or efficient. Obviously, we don't want efficiency to come at the cost of good. But yeah, that's what you get when you hire. I call it like hiring up, like hiring someone with a lot of experience. You should get less of their time because they should not need to spend as much time doing the things that someone else doesn't have experience
with organizations.
doing.
I developed a whole methodology for developing like a main message tagline thing, because I've been doing it for literally 20 years. And I developed this whole process, and we can do it in the morning.
Yeah.
I can do it in 4 hours. Now, is it going to be like the exact fine? No, but we are going to be 90% of the way there because I've just done it so long. I know how to do it. And so wait, like, but, and so something like that would be like 3,000 or so, like, oh, but that's because you would pay somebody and it would take weeks and of the back and forth and all of that. And it's just like, it's done. And that's because I've been doing it for 20 years, what I'm saying? So you get that efficiency and you get a better product, and people like it because they get to be a part of, I know how to get people to buy into the outcome because they've been bought into the process, right? And so in the end, it's faster, it's more efficient, you get more buy-in, and you get a great thing that they own because they created it, right? They didn't send me off like, we do it together. I said, the magic's in the room. All I have to do is pull it out of you. Like, oh, we thought of, like, yes, you did. Like, it was in you the whole time. Like, we had no idea. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and you get that kind of excitement because we know what we're doing. And I don't want to deny anyone the ability to learn, because if your goal is to have that person learn how to write grants, and it's okay that she takes 10 hours, that's okay.
Amazing.
And also, but understand, that when you do something like that, it is going to take more time.
And the reality is right now in the sector is there aren't that many people to hire in-house. Like, there is a hiring crisis where you could be waiting a year to find that gem of a person who doesn't have a lot of experience, but is a quick learner and who's going to figure it out. Listen, if you find that person and you have the capacity to let them learn and invest in their learning, right? Like, don't just throw them into the deep end without resources. Give them coaching, give them training, give them like a professional development budget that includes a lot of support. I love that. That is like, I experienced that, and for like in my own career, and I think there's so much room for that. And again, it's not either or, but it's really looking at like what's most realistic for your organization right now. And there just aren't fundraisers. They're really, it's a problem right now in the sector where I see jobs being like posted again and again and again for a year, if not more.
I also think going beyond fractional just a little bit into this idea of always defaulting to hiring internally. It's, you know what I mean? So thinking fractionally as in marketing, or, in a, because I know people who do fractional, they're like a fractional, director of communications, right?
Yes.
Or chief marketing, fractional CMO, where it's going to be the same kind of thing. And, because it's a proclivity to default to, we have to hire in-house, we have to bring somebody on. And when you open up, when you open up to the, even like hiring out for small things like Upworks or Fiverr or things like that, where you can, I have a VA, I have an assistant, I pay about $400 a month, and she works, 10 to 12 hours. I can't remember, honestly, I think it's 15 hours a month for me. Like you can find so much support. You don't always have to hire in. And she's like, she's in South Africa, but she's super smart, and I am working with somebody on SEO, and she's training alongside with me and learning how to do it with me. And I just feel like
Yeah.
there's a lot of opportunities to really think outside, that we need to bring somebody on and at
Yeah.
full-time salary.
Yeah. And I mean, those examples that you shared. So fractional, if you're thinking fractional, you need someone highly experienced, again, who's coming in, doing the strategy and the implementation. There's fractional CMOs, there's fractional CFOs, there's fractional HR support. I'm sure there's more. So that is a really great solution, to have someone who is expert, but doing broad day-to-day work. VAs or other like project-based people who don't need to be the best, but you shouldn't be doing this in-house, and things like design and Canva. And, there's lots of, I love a good Canva template, like organizations. If you can get 90% of the work done by someone who's really good at it, and you finish that 10%,
Yeah.
amazing, right? There's so many, and then specialists, right? Someone who's going to come in, do one thing really well, set up your website or do your SEO or what have you, and then peace out and go on to their other clients. Great. I think we definitely, I mean, part of it is that idea of, we need to extract, if we have someone in-house, we need to use those resources first. And oftentimes that goes to what's urgent instead of what's important.
Right.
And so we're like, well, you can do, well, your staff are burning out at the end of the day. Like, that's not sustainable. And we see that with people leaving the sector or high turnover in jobs. Just because someone can do it doesn't mean they should. And looking at how do we find that balance between optimizing our in-house capacity, but also bringing in the experts when we need the experts.
Yeah. Yeah. And really leveraging that experience. And I want to go back to something you said, because I think it's really important. Whereas the fractional, it's long-term in a sense of, you got to give it a year, and also not long term. Eventually, the goal is to raise capacity to bring somebody on full time. And I think that is an important distinction, because this is not it is a long-term solution in a sense. And also the goal would be to transfer that knowledge and raise somebody's, right? My goal is always to raise your capacity, right? I look at it like you look at like fishing, I look at it like a waterfall. Okay. I'm gonna like, great, my well's gonna overflow to you, and then it's gonna overflow to somebody. And then so that you can like train them in the principles that I work with people on. And you know what I mean? And so that keeps I like the idea of the flow, it keeps that flow going. In the sense of like that fractional person can also be, building the skills of the people around them, right?
Yes, absolutely. And they can handle a transition, when they can help hire someone in-house and onboard them and all that kind of stuff. So it is, obviously all of our goals is always build organizational capacity. I also think like we need to start thinking as a sector that, what is the sweet spot of like amount of time you should work in an organization? On the one hand, we have really high turnover in short periods of time. That's not good. But also, I don't think it's good, this might be an unpopular opinion, if someone's in the same organization for 20, 30 years. Like, that's all, like, unless they're amazing at innovation and change and embrace that, but most people aren't. We don't like change.
We don't like change, right?
Yeah. And so I think that's too long. And so what is like, how do we start to think about capacity, but also the capacity to evolve and change and build succession plans and see healthy turnover, not like crisis turnover or burning out staff turnover, but like good succession. And I feel like that's also something we don't really talk about, or we talk about one side of that,
Yeah.
which is again, too short, but we don't really talk about the too long.
Right. Where somebody's just kind of, now you're sort of complacent. It's
Yeah.
kind of, and I think things should be easy, and also some, and also there's a room for capacity and growth, and just letting go,
Yeah.
sometimes you just gotta let go. And everything, and I would say, everything ends eventually, I mean, and it is, and I think a lot of it is because people are afraid of change. And that's one of the paradoxes of consultancy or change management, which we are both in the business of, is people, they say they want change, but they don't want to go through any discomfort in order to get it.
Yeah.
And that's not really it works.
Yeah, it's really hard to change. Comfortable change is probably not the change that's worthwhile.
I just want to be safe over here, and you guys do all, get all, and that's why things get complacent. It's because the change feels daunting. It feels, icky. It feels like things are getting out of control. And so that's sort of my domain, is like helping people understand, how to go through that. I just had somebody tell me, this was many years ago, he said, I was trying to avoid the drama. And I just said, we don't avoid the drama. We just walk right through, because you got to clear it out. And there's just certain things we have to go through that to get to the other side, and to choose to walk through that discomfort. That's when you can release their best. Anyway. Okay. So thank you for sharing all this with me. Anything else you want people to know about being fractional?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the one thing is, it is a term that is growing in popularity, and I don't know if everyone has the same definition as I do. So if you're talking to someone who's a fractional anything, just make sure that you get clarity around what it is, how they work, because what I describe is how I teach fundraisers how to be fractional executives. I also coach other fractional executives in other capacities, but this is my understanding of it. This is what I'm teaching people, but lots of people have their own experiences. So
right.
Just check.
So it's new. There could be a lot of definitions floating around. Nothing's really standardized yet. Okay. Yeah. And so if people want to get in touch with you, either fundraisers who are interested in, becoming fractional, or nonprofits who are like, I'd like to talk with Cindy about what this could really look like for my organization, where could they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so go to fractionalfundraising.co. You can kind of navigate, either you're an organization looking for a fractional fundraiser. We have a directory of the trained fractional fundraisers in my network that you can book calls directly with them, or you can fill out a form and I will match you with someone based on the information you provide me. And you would have a conversation with them and learn more about them individually as a fractional fundraiser for your needs. If you're a fundraiser with 10-ish plus years experience and you want to be your own boss and do things differently, I do run an academy. It's called the Fractional Fundraiser Academy. I open enrollment twice a year, and you can just, on the same website, fractionalfundraising.co, go to become a fractional fundraiser. If we're not open in enrollment right now, you'll be able to join the wait list.
When is your next academy?
So depending on when this airs, July 2024, and then the next one will be in the new year of 2025.
Okay. All right. I love it. Yeah. Thank you. This has been enlightening and fun. And I think this is, like I said, it's that secret option C.
I know. And I love that we both have like our own term for that, because I haven't met anyone else who thinks about it in that way. So I love that. I'm so excited to know that you talk about that too.
I love it. That's what, it's like, that's when the real possibilities emerge. Then when
Yeah.
you stop thinking I have to sacrifice one thing or another. And really the secret option seeks is in any aspect of your life. So just so you can
Yeah.
start looking for those. All right, Cindy, thanks so much for being here. And if you want to connect with me to learn more about how you can grow your influence so you can get what you want without feeling rejected, ineffective, or pushy, I'm happy to talk to you. There's a link in the show notes, or you can go to courageouscommunication.com and you can book a call with me and we can talk more about it as well. Thanks again for being here, Cindy.
Thank you.